At 10:30 in the morning, I got this really loud on my door.
On September 9th, 2012, our world basically shattered. At 5:30 in the morning, there was a knock at the door.
So I went and I opened it, and I saw two plainclothes officers standing there.
And he said, well, there's been an accident. Can we go sit in the living room? I said, no, where's my daughter? He said, well, can we go sit down? And I said, no, is my daughter okay? And he said, no, ma'am, she's not.
And they asked me, are you Mrs. Rogers? And I said, yes. Do you have a son named Robert? I said, yes. Bobby got a phone call late in the afternoon from a friend inviting him to go hang out and spend the night at this guy's house.
Tiffany had picked up her friend Braden from his house at about between 11 and 11:30 that night, and they drove up to the small development there at Table Rock.
I remember I had been working all that afternoon, and Tiffany had texted me kind of in the early evening and talking about how there were some friends up near Table Rock.
And he was running through the house and he said, bye Mom, bye Dad, love you. And we said, hey buddy, bye, we'll see you later, have a great day. And he went outside and something inside me just said, go with him, go with him.
Some of the guys had some vehicles and we were all just kind of looking at each other's trucks, and that kind of led Tiffany to wanting to show off her, she had recently gotten a new Hyundai Tiburon, which is a new kind of, it's like a sporty form of hatchback vehicle.
But she was in love with this car. It was cute, it was red, it had a little sunroof, and so they got in the car along with Braden.
And I remember because I was holding her keys for her that night, and she was kind of like, hey, let's go on a little ride. It's just up the hill a little ways. I just want to show my car. And like, oh, okay, sure, why not? And I remember she had gotten the driver's seat, and the kid she had been talking to, he opened the door to get in the passenger seat. And
I believe Tiffany had said, hey, Bobby, why don't you come with us? And Bobby was even in his pajamas because he was actually staying the night there.
Bobby and I kind of shuffled in from one of the sides, and I remember with her car that the back seats were extremely tight. I mean, I was leaned all the way back and my knees were nearly touching my face, and her hatchback window was so low my head had to almost be bent just to fit in there.
And so they all got in the car and drove up the hill, and a lot of this is pieced together from what Braden can remember and whatnot.
Kind of remember rolling down the driveway, and so that's kind of the last thing I remember.
They told us that Bobby and 3 other teens were in a vehicle and had left the house where they were supposed to be and took the car for a drive.
This was just a quarter to a half mile drive up a hill and back. They weren't planning on going on a longer distance drive.
The roads are paved, but not standard streets like we have in town. Very dark up there. There's no street lights or any type of lighting on the road.
And went up the hill and turned around. I guess there's a circular area where they can turn around up there, and came back down, and they were just a couple of houses away from where they needed to be.
It was a very short little ride, probably total less than a mile. Mm-hmm. And
they didn't make it.
They didn't make it.
He was the most outgoing, happy-go-lucky kid we had in our family. His friends often said, does Bobby ever have a bad day? He's always happy, he's always smiling, he's always telling jokes. And that's the Bobby that we knew. He liked everyone to be happy. If there was turmoil in the house, he would do his best to make sure that everybody was getting along. And he certainly didn't want to be the cause of anybody having a bad day.
Sherry and I were talking about how all the kids responded to the way Bobby was. That was after Bobby's passing that, wow, we had such a great son to so many people. What a fantastic kid he was to the people, not just here at home, but out there in our community. I always thought Bobby was going to have become something great in his life. But
he wanted to go to school and become an anesthesiologist. He said, "Mom, it's only 12 years of college." 12 years of college.
His grades were stellar. He was a 4.0 student. He tried to keep that on the down low. And then we talked about taking a cruise down in the Gulf of Mexico, and going out and seeing some of the islands. And we'll spend Christmas doing that. He's like, no, I can't go because I have to go to school. His brothers and sister were so upset with him because he had to stay home because he was worried about his 4.0. He was worried about, having that perfect attendance, and he didn't want to miss school, and he wanted to hang out with his friends. His friends were like the most important thing to him.
Bobby had great friends. They were polite and fun-loving. We have a video of him wearing a gorilla suit going in and terrorizing his friend through the halls of Walmart. And so that's a cherished memory for us.
Yeah, I don't know that Bobby ever met a stranger. And that, just is the kind of guy that Bobby was. He loved people, and he loved helping people.
Tiffany was an amazing girl. She was the best daughter a mother could ever hope for. She was the type of kid that never gave me any trouble. She got great grades. She was a volleyball star. She would have had a volleyball scholarship for college if she had wanted it. She was still in the deciding mode at the time of the accident. As a matter of fact, I told her that weekend, you need to make the decision. And she was the type of girl that would drop anything for a friend and did it every single time. Would stop and help a homeless person with food, would take someone in and buy them food at a nearby restaurant or go get food and bring back to them. She just had a huge, huge heart for people. She absolutely loved people. Goofy, fun, serious, sensitive. She just was everything you'd want in a daughter.
We've actually met the police officer that was the first on the scene and have such respect for him. It's a horrible thing to have to come upon, especially being a young officer. And he tried everything that he could to help.
So I knew we were going to a pretty serious crash from the get-go. When I approached the edge of the road where the rocks were pushed out of place, essentially by the vehicle, I could see a red car kind of on its side and towards its roof. So it was completely overturned and severely damaged.
So we find out later that Bobby and Braden had been in the back seat and had been ejected out of the car, and that Tiffany had died of blunt force trauma to the chest, which I didn't even know was possible until this, from hitting the airbag so hard because she wasn't wearing her seatbelt, that she and the airbag made impact so hard that she died at that point. And the car went another 100 feet down the cliff, but it didn't just land at the bottom of the cliff, it landed on top of our daughter. That was a little hard to take.
The terrain was extremely difficult to maneuver even on foot. As I get down to the crash site, I am closer to the car, and I still know that there's a female that had been ejected, and they didn't know where she was at, and I didn't see her as I made my way down. But the first person I saw was a young boy laying on his back. And immediately I began to check for any signs of life or function, and noticed right away there was not. The thing I noticed while I was doing CPR on this boy, later identified to me as Bobby, was there was another boy laying just a few feet away from him that was moaning.
Couldn't recollect where I'd come from, where I was, what time it was. I mean, I was just conscious to know enough that I was awake and I was lying on a hillside, and just enough to know that something was wrong. Like that's all I knew. And I kind of remember shifting my body a little bit, and I could see like the luminescence of her tail lights a little bit down the hill, but I was so out of it. I couldn't piece anything together.
The amazing thing in all this was that the officer that was first on the scene tried to save Bobby's life and was unable to do so. Bobby died very shortly after, and he was unconscious, so he didn't suffer. But then he went down and held Tiffany's hand
for the couple of hours that it took for them to get that car up and off that cliff and off of her so that they could take her up the mountain. So there were amazing things that happened that were out of our control and out of our knowledge at that time, but as things continued to unfold, there were a lot of blessings in there as well. That another young father, this policeman was a young father, that he took the time to stay with her and to pray with her and not just leave her down there alone, even though she was already gone. That meant a lot to us. Yeah. And I know that was a huge impact for him to see these great kids go through this, and that has certainly impacted his life as well.
So this is the private neighborhood above Boise where our lives changed forever.
And as we near this corner, this was the corner that took her off guard. She wasn't ready for it, and she missed it.
So Tiffany and Bobby both lost their lives right in this very place. We come here once in a while. It's changed a lot in the last 3 years. The whole terrain feels more rugged. It feels more harsh now, even more than it was 3 years ago. But somehow I find a sense of peace here, because we know that this is where our kids left this world for the one that they're in now. And there's a sense of peace with that.
I think it's what gets us through.
It is.
I walked up to Sherry and had never met her before, and the first thing she told me was, she says, I want to make sure that you know that there's no ill feelings here whatsoever. She didn't even know me, and she just knew that I was Tiffany's dad, but that was the greatest expression of Christian love I think I've ever experienced in my life.
And my wife and I, we sat there and held each other and cried. And you know, I said, Sherry, we have an opportunity here to serve God. We could be like everybody else and be angry and want to take out our pain on someone else. And I said, and this poor family, can you imagine what they're going through? Tiffany's family, to think that their daughter was driving a vehicle that took the life of another. Because we thought, well, what if Bobby was driving? Because he had been learning about driving. How horrible we thought that would be. Huh. So we decided at that point that the best thing to do was to show a community how to get through a horrible situation and what God can do for us. And when we did that, we had peace that just came over us. And the way we felt towards this other family was like this immediate love that I can't explain. I mean, usually you say love is something that's joyful and it's such an emotion that it's wonderful and it's light and it's fluffy, it's whatever. But this was different. This was something I can't even put my finger on. All I can say is that I knew that I wanted to be with these people. I wanted to go through this process with them, and I cared about them because we just lost our son and daughter. And you know what? We have become like family. I consider Dave like my brother and Beverly my sister, and I believe they feel the same way about us.
And that was the beginning of what has turned into an incredible friendship with Duke and Sherry.
Family, really.
Very much, very much family.
You know, the hardest thing I think for all of us is that What we heard after the investigation is that this was a survivable crash.
Yeah.
You know, if every kid in that car that night would have worn their seatbelt, every kid, I think, would have been able to stand in front of this camera today and talk.
For as bad as it was and where the car ended up, had they just had their seatbelts on, the car would have protected them.
Again, with physics in mind, there's nothing that the human body can do to prevent itself from escaping that car due to the motion and the physics involved.
Tiffany wouldn't have hit the airbag, and the boys wouldn't have been thrown out of the car. They would have been inside the car just like the other young man was.
It took something as simple as not wearing the seatbelt that one time on a simple night drive to end all of that.
Such a simple decision. And I think I speak for all of us when I say when we're watching the news and we hear someone else getting ejected out of a car, it brings us to our knees. Because it is preventable. It is just one quick little decision. And we now know what those families are going to go through and what the friends are going to go through. And the last thing in the world we want is for anyone to have to go through the losses we've gone through.
That's where all of the ideas started with Buckle Up for Bobby.
I noticed right away on social media that Duke and Sherry Rogers had started to prepare and put out a cause.
We started thinking about we need to do something more in the line of getting out there and telling people.
I remember the day that Sherry called me up and said, let's meet for coffee, I want to talk to you. And so we met for coffee and she started talking to me about Buckle Up for Bobby.
And to share our message so that somebody might take the time to say, you know what, I'm going to buckle up for Bobby. Buckle Up for Bobby. That's going to be our name, Buckle Up for Bobby.
Even though she did insist that let's make it Tiffany too, I don't want to exclude Tiffany. And I said, I don't by any means feel like Tiffany's excluded in this, but this just had a great flow for marketing purposes and really getting the word out there for people to buckle up. So I love Buckle Up for Bobby. I have jumped on board and done some speaking with her and going to high schools and going to teen conferences and whatnot and speak at events to just get these kids to realize how important that 3 seconds is to buckle up.
We've spoke to over 30,000 kids in high school, from elementary to their little health classes that they have, all the way up to senior high school.
And that's what Buckle Up for Bobby is really there to do, is try to teach these kids to make good choices. Because if it can happen to Bobby and Tiffany, who were great at school, great at sports, good kids, it can happen to anybody.
And it's real because Bobby's them.
Because it has spoken to kids so amazingly. They're so receptive and they are listening and they're so touched by our stories. And when we present, there's usually not a dry eye in the house. And so we know they're listening.
We'll drive 2.5 hours in one direction just to give a 30-minute spiel to a driver's ed class, and then turn around and come home. And to us, it's worth it, because each one of those lives are just as valuable as our one child was.
I'm super excited to be on that train with her. She's driving the train and I'm jumping on and glad to just kind of give it the good pull and help wherever I can.
And so we hear a lot of times when we talk to the young people, yeah, thanks for what you did. I don't go anywhere anymore without my seatbelt on because my little one back here tells me, you better buckle up, Dad or Mom. Buckle up for Bobby. And it's like, yeah, our message is getting out there.
Welcome to the Bobby Strong Family Fun Run.
In the 2 short years we've been doing this, the crowds have grown threefold. So the first year was, I think it was Crazy Socks or something like that. And then this last year, we went with the theme of dressing up like superheroes, because Bobby loved Iron Man. That was his thing, the Marvel characters. And so with that, we said, hey, dress up like your favorite superhero. Oh man, we saw all kinds of stuff from robes to helmets and I think Captain America even showed up, and just all kinds of crazy homemade get-ups, So we give out little awards, for that kind of stuff, just to make it fun. But that's the whole idea about the Buckle Up for Bobby Fun Run, and it's really is a way for us to give back to the community. We want it to be as if all one big family. Somebody told us once before, it's like, you've just joined a fraternity that nobody wants to get into, where you've lost a child. And you know what? We feel that way about the loss of our child and other people that are just like us that have lost their children in situations. We ask them to please come be a part of this with us, because your story is just as important. Ours is no different than yours. When you lose a child, and we want them to know that they are a part of what we have going on as well. And so we've opened up our arms to the community to say, please come and be a part of this with us. And that's another segment. So it's like, here you've got this fun run to go have fun with families. We have families that out there that have lost their children, that have a chance to be recognized in the community, and to know that what they're going through is shared by all of us, and we love each other. It's a chance to be kind of silly and wacky, wearing a funny outfit.
So please join us in a little circle. We're going to release these balloons up to our kiddos and our moms and dads, spouses, people that we love that have gone on before us.
The balloon launch is it's very dear to me. It started out like this. I believe it was 3 days later, before the funeral. We were invited to go up on the hill up by Table Rock where the accident took place. And somebody had brought along, as a way of trying to process this grief, the pink and blue balloons. And at the right moment, we let the balloons go to signify, letting our children go. And that's where the balloon launch came from. And that's when we invite all those other people in our community that we've become friends with and we really care about. And sometimes we don't have enough balloons, but we all grab hold and we share together. And at that moment we let go, and our thoughts, it just signifies our thoughts and our love towards our kids that we can send up. And that's how it started, was from ground zero, from where our children were. And we've incorporated that into our fun run. And then we give out a prayer at that point. And it's also a spiritual type of thing too. Thanking God for the time that we had with our kids and how fun it was. It's a good time. So that's what the balloon launch means to us.
We'd like to just send our balloons skyward and just remember those that we've lost. This is a day of celebration of the lives that they had and our memories of them. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3.